Hello everyone, this is PENCILBURN Studios again. So a few days ago, I put a Q&A on my Instagram and I kind of asked everyone to just ask me a bunch of questions about Clapham and I'd answer them. Got about 11 or 10 questions here, all from people on Instagram, and once again I'd like to thank you for asking questions. Questions are always welcome, and if this is a successful video I might do another Q&A, or if you have a question just ask me in my Instagram DMs, ask me in my TikTok DMs, ask me in the YouTube comment section, you know. I'm on most platforms anyhow. So, let's start the Q&A. Matthew Longworth asks, he asks two questions, but they're very similar topic. How long till completion of Season 2, and when's Season 2 going to be done? So, Season 2 is done. All the animation is done, all the scripting is done, but the thing is that there are these comics that are going to come between Season 1 and 2. And it's not like if you don't read them you won't know what's going on, but it's intended that it goes Season 1 comics, Season 2. So from January to October I'm going to be releasing the comics, and you can read those and it might explain and lead to things that will happen in Season 2. So Season 2 is done, it's completed, to answer the first part of the question, and to answer the second part of the question, I'm hoping to release it November, December 2022, and that may seem like a long time, but I hope that there'll be a lot of stuff in between to keep you entertained until that day comes. I'm hoping to make a teaser trailer or some kind of trailer soon as well, but thanks for the question, Matthew Longworth. On to the next one. Roshan Lyle asks, who's your favourite character? God damn. That's kind of hard. I think the Reverend W. Audrey said it best. You know, when you make characters, it's kind of like your family, and in a family you don't have favourites. I mean, it's kind of a weird thing to say, but, you know, it makes sense. Perhaps if I had to choose a favourite character, I mean, no surprise here, it's Clapham, I suppose. You know, he's just such a lovable doofus, really, isn't he? I mean, he tries so hard to do everything right, but it doesn't always go his way, you know? And I like to think that there's a lot of everyone in Clapham, you know? I mean, he's a protagonist, so of course people would be able to relate with him, I hope. But yeah, I like to think that Clapham is my favourite character because he's relatable, I'd like to think anyway. So thanks for the question, Roshan Lyle. On to the next question. Lydia Shortland asks, what inspired you to start PENCILBURN Studios? Now, this is not exactly straightforward an answer, but PENCILBURN Studios was kind of an afterthought. So basically, Clam's Adventures has been in the works since 2015, so I've been trying to do something to get Clam's Adventures out there. And in all seriousness, I could have just called my YouTube channel after my name, or the Clapham channel, but you know, it doesn't sound cool, you know. And I hope that if Clam's Adventures get successful, then I can branch out and do other things, you know. I'd love to do like adaptations of like folklore and public domain stories like Robin Hood and The Wind in the Willows one day, so you know, I'm not stuck with the stigma of Clam's Adventures if it ever gets boring, which I highly doubt. And bonus answer, PENCILBURN actually comes from this thing that I kind of had. So when you're drawing or if you're writing, you're kind of putting pressure on your ring finger, and sometimes when I put pressure on it too much, it feels really weird. It kind of feels like an ache in the joint and kind of like this weird lag in my finger, if that makes sense. And I say, that's PENCILBURN. But also PENCILBURN, the name comes from the fact that if you're going to be using a pencil for a very long time, and if you're going to be putting it on a piece of paper, then it's going to create friction, and you know, if you create enough friction, you might start a fire. I mean, no one's probably started a fire by drawing, but you know, PENCILBURN is a silly pun. But anyhow, thanks for the question, Lydia Shortland. And next question now is from Nikki 03P, and he asks, which character took the most time to design and why? That's got to be Sophie, because as I said, Clam's Adventures has been in the works for like 5-6 years, since 2015, and of course characters have had all kinds of designs. Clapham has stayed the same throughout all that time, and Jamal has pretty much stayed the same as well. He just got rid of a jumper and wore like a waistcoat, and John and Jane were created the way they look and they've stayed the same. Linda's been a bit of a wild card, I suppose, because originally she just started out as like a little sketch and then kind of evolved into the character we know now, but certain attributes of her character were still present. But Sophie's had the biggest change in design. So originally she kind of just looked like an emo, for lack of a better word. She kind of just had like this pink and purple design going on, and I'm thankful that I didn't go with that, because now I think about it, that's pretty sexist, you know, pink and purple, but I digress. Then in 2016, I kind of redefined the designs, and she kind of came out as this like red biker person. You know, she had like a red hat and a red leather jacket and stuff like that. I think it was during a phase where I wanted to be like, oh, Clapham, the dude with the attitude. It was not my brightest moment. But eventually I narrowed it down to a design we're more familiar with, you know, the red dress, but instead of a red dress it was a red shirt and a grey skirt. And I don't actually know why. I think it was because the biker one had a red jacket and a grey skirt, so I kind of just streamlined it and used the same colours. But eventually I was like, why not just make it like a completely red thing, you know? So yeah, and now we have Sophie as we have her now. I was also cycling through all kinds of names because I wasn't really sure. Originally I called her Charlotte, I think, and I think originally I called her Cindy as well. One time I kind of combined Wild Style from the Lego Movie and Candy Kong from Donkey Kong, and made this cringy name. I don't really want to talk about it because it's that cringe. But yeah, eventually I came across the name Sophie, because if anyone's seen the BFG or read the BFG, there's a character in that called Sophie, and it's just kind of a name you don't really come across anymore. So it's like, nice. It makes the character and the series unique, because, you know, you don't hear a lot of Sophies these days, do you, really? In, like, cartoons and stuff. I could be wrong, but hey, it's a nice name. So thanks for the question, Nikki03P. On to the next one. Okay, next question from Beansy Time YT. What inspired you to start making epic comics? If we're talking comics in general, then I guess it was just out of boredom, really. I started, like, making funny comics probably for as long as I can remember, really. Probably since I was 8 years old. But, you know, when you're an 8-year-old, you say, oh, I'm going to make this comic, and it's going to be great, and it's going to be awesome, and everyone's going to love it, and then you get to the first page and you're like, I don't really want to do this anymore. In primary school, I had a bit of a reputation of making comics. I used to make these comics with people I knew in school, and they used to like it a lot. So that was my shtick for a while, you know? I remember when I was going to high school, I was like, oh, I'm going to be the comics kid, and I'm going to make all these superheroes, and I'm going to be the next Stan Lee, and it's going to be amazing. I didn't, because high school was terrifying, and I didn't exactly know what I was doing, and becoming the comics kid was the least of my worries at that time. But eventually I used to write these Marvel comics, but the twist was that me and my friends were the superheroes, instead of like Peter Parker or Steve Rogers or Tony Stark, and people really like that. I mean, who doesn't want to be Spider-Man, you know what I mean? So I also got the reputation of being the comic kid in school as well. And yeah, it was kind of just out of boredom, really, you know? You know, when you got nothing else to do and you've got a pen and paper in front of you, you know, it's an instinct of mine to just do something with it, you know? So I've been making comics for a very long time, and of course, that's kind of built up to Clavum, you might say. And if your question is talking about Clavum comics in general, here's a bit of an answer to that. So when I first started making Clavum, I kind of underestimated everything. I mean, let's just put it there. Like, I thought, well, this isn't so hard, you know, all I've got to do is make this picture look like it's moving and put it in a timeline. It's gonna be easy. But it wasn't. And if you think animation is easy, think again. It's a lot of trial and error. You need a lot of patience, something that I don't have. The worst part is that I was in my sixth form, which is basically just college in your high school, and my parents and my teachers were saying, you gotta double down, you gotta work hard, and here I was making silly cartoons, and I thought, I'm not gonna be able to make cartoons every year, so why don't I just make one cartoon series one year, one comic series another, and cycle through it like that. So if things had gone that way, this year would have been season 1, next year would have been like a comic season, and then in 2023 I would have finally released season 2. I'm kind of glad that's not how it's going to be, but yeah. So that was the idea, and eventually I realised I've got plenty of time, because season 1 was originally going to come out in 2020, and if that was the case, then season 2 would have had to come out in 2021 this year, and I was going through my finals, and you know, there's no time for animating when you got your finals going. So I'm kind of glad that Klama's Adventures came out this year, because now I can just make yearly seasons. Animating a series takes about 6 months, so it's workable, and I don't really need to make comics anymore. I will make more comics, I think, because I think it's cool, and it's a more easy way to get my stories out instead of animation. But yeah, that's kind of what inspired me to make comics regarding Clavum, so thanks for asking the question, Beansy Time. I hope I answered the question. Next question. A Hussein 1011 has 2 questions. First question is, how are you getting along with Klama's Adventures? I'll answer this first because it's pretty short. Pretty good, I'd say. Yeah, everything's going well, I think. You know, season 2's done. All I've got to do is edit some stuff and make a trailer, perhaps. You know, everything's good. Everything's alright. And his second question is, what you got upcoming for Klama's Adventures? Alright, so upcoming stuff is comics so far. From January to October, we will be releasing a comic every month. And it will basically be a magazine, because it's got like 3 comic strips and the main Clavum story, and the stories will be split into 2 parts, so there'll be like 5 brand new adventures of Clavum's Adventures across the months of January to October, and by the time that ends, season 2 will be airing, and that's all I got upcoming right now. I am working on like a video comic, audio, visual comic thing of the first adventure. So basically, I recorded the lines, I've recorded the speech bubbles of the characters, and I'm just gonna put the pictures and the panels from the comics on a timeline, and it'll kind of be like watching a storyboard, but it's kind of like, if people don't want to read the comic, fine, watch this and you'll be up to speed. That's kind of everything upcoming for Clavum. I have all kinds of ideas for more comics, and I have all kinds of ideas for the next few seasons. I have planned out season 3, but I've got to write the scripts yet. And yeah, that's basically everything that's upcoming for Clavum's Adventures. So thanks for the questions, A Hussein 1011. On to the next question. Matthew MBW asks, who is your biggest art inspiration? So my biggest art inspiration would probably be old cartoons and comic strips, I suppose. When I was animating a lot of season 1 and a lot of season 2, I used to have videos on in the background of like evolutions of cartoon characters like Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse, Daffy Duck. You know, those are a big influence on how I do things, especially with season 2, and hopefully you'll see I've tried to incorporate more cartoony elements, you know, sort of crazy, wacky stuff going on. And, you know, that's been a big inspiration. You know, I always try and watch cartoons and see, oh yeah, I could use that, or that'd be a cool gag to adapt. Stuff like that, you know. Also anime, strangely enough. So when I first started drawing, I was a big anime person. I never watched it really, which is quite embarrassing to say, but like, I liked the look of it, so I was like, I should adapt this and try and learn how to draw anime. And a lot of my friends who knew how to draw anime said, it's going to take you like 5 years, but I was like, nah, forget it. I know what I'm doing. I'm never going to die. Silly things like that. And my art styles kind of incorporated ideas from anime, you might say. You know, kind of like the big eyes, maybe. I mean, they're not massive, or they're not very anime looking, but I feel like that's something that I would have said, oh my gosh, this is anime, back in like 2014. So yeah, thanks for the question, Matthew .mbw. To the next question. Pega101 asks, what's your creative process like? I'm gonna guess this is how either I animate or come up with stories. So I'll just split this question into two, I suppose. Coming up with stories can be kind of hard, especially when I have to actually come up with stories, if that makes sense. So I'll be in class, and I think, wouldn't it be cool if Clatham did XYZ? I'll then come to like writing the story plan for the next season, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, what story should I write? It's quite infuriating really, but you know, I get on with it. So I've had all kinds of story ideas in my head for quite a while. Some of them are crazy, and some of them are kind of boring if I think about it too much. So I just come up with stories whenever I can, you know, and I put pen to paper and I try and write the script. Sometimes I kind of hit a wall and I come back to it later. But yeah, that's kind of how I come up with stories. Now, as for animation, I kind of split up the script into several parts, call them scenes, and I record all the scenes, and then every day I try and do one scene. If I can do more than one scene, fantastic, but I have to at least do one scene a day. Sometimes I split up the work by saying, if I can do 2 scenes on Wednesday, then I'll spend Monday and Tuesday on this one scene, which has happened quite a lot. Yeah, so basically I try and take it scene by scene, and sometimes I look at the script and I go, well, I can't really animate that, and I cut it out and replace it with something that will help progress the plot. And yeah, that's basically the creative process of animating. Then I gotta find appropriate music, if there's music in that scene. But yeah, that's basically how I go about animating. And then of course, when I completed an episode, which could take me like up to 3 weeks or maybe even 4 weeks, I mush it all together in the timeline, add the appropriate transitions and stings and stuff like that, and then you go on an episode, which is pretty cool. Only about 7 more to go. So thanks for the question, Pega101. Next question. The Marble Tree asks, how did you decide on the names of the characters? Well, Clavum's is pretty straightforward. Basically, I drew this guy with spiky hair, and I didn't want to call him Spike because I watched a show called Rugrats and there was a dog called Spike, and I thought, well, Spike's a dog's name then, isn't it? So I looked on Google Translate, I typed in Spike in French, Spike in Spanish, and I think we typed in Spike in Latin eventually, and we came up with Clavum. That's basically where it came from. The name Sophie kind of came from the BFG. There's a girl in that called Sophie, and I figured that's not really a name you come across these days anymore, do you? So I thought it'd be cool to include it, because make it a little bit more unique and its own thing, so to speak. With Jamal, it's kind of been a name at the back of my head, because I used to watch this show where it's like, there's this guy called Jamal and he's really cool, and you know, Jamal's a cool name, so I figured, oh, I'll call this character Jamal, because Jamal kind of just existed as a sketch for a very long time, and I thought, maybe I should call him Callum. No, that's too similar to Clavum. Oh, I'll call him Jamal then, because that's a name that's been sat at the back of my head for who knows how long. For Linda, the character sketch just kind of looked like a Linda. like the eventual final design just kind of looked like a Linda, so I was like, fine, Linda. With John Smith, Doctor Who fans would probably know that it's a reference to Doctor Who. Like the Doctor would go around calling himself John Smith when people asked him, or her nowadays, their name. So that's kind of a joke, because sometimes when I'm extremely lazy, I write John to be sort of a wheelchair-bound doctor, so to speak. So yeah, that's a funny joke. He's a sciencey person called John Smith. He might be the Doctor, he might not be. I'm not going to tell you. And with Jane, I'm not really sure where it came from, because usually when I think of Jane, I think of Tarzan, so I suppose it's not really a name that people use in media anymore, really, unless it's like Spider-Man, like Mary Jane. But yeah, I guess it was one of those names that I kind of plucked out of a hat and gave to the character, because it was the only thing I could come up with. So yeah, that's where most of the characters' names come from. Most of them are kind of just, that sketch looks like this name, or oh, it's just a name I pulled out of a hat, or this character looks like they should be called something, but I don't want to call them that, let's call them something else. That's kind of what happened most of the time. So I hope that answered the question, and thank you for the question, the Marble Tree. Finally, B Rising R2104 asks, biggest inspirations. So, originally, Sonic the Hedgehog, because I mean, look at the man's hair. It's basically inverted Sonic the Hedgehog, really, if you think about it. But biggest inspirations when I started making the show probably would have been a lot of like cartoons that I would have watched at the time. So like Danger Mouse, stuff like that. Sometimes I have taken inspiration from Scooby-Doo, which is quite weird because I never watched Scooby-Doo growing up. So there's that as well. Also down the line, there was this really weird era of Doctor Who where the Doctor was stranded on Earth, and so he had to fight aliens and robots on Earth and stuff, so I thought, hey, I'll take inspiration from that, because Klama hasn't got TARDIS, so it'll be a good source of inspiration, and it has been a good inspiration. Yeah, so most of my inspirations come from like Danger Mouse or Doctor Who and stuff like that, and maybe even a little bit of Scooby-Doo. I get inspired by all kinds of things, really. Sometimes the inspirations make sense, like Danger Mouse or Doctor Who, and sometimes they don't, like strangely enough, Thomas the Tank Engine. Going back to Matthew.mbw's question, classic cartoons, you know, just stuff like that. So yeah, biggest inspirations really, if I had to list them, would be Danger Mouse, Doctor Who, Marvel Comics, DC Comics. I'm pretty sure it's the same category, really. You know, stuff like that. Not sure if it's ever obvious that these are the inspirations, but yeah, those are my inspirations, and thanks for the question, B Rising R2104. Alrighty then, that's all the questions. I think this will be about a half an hour video. I've been sat here speaking for 33 minutes. Wow, that's going to be a long video. I hope you all have the stomach for it. So that's all the questions I got on my Instagram during the Q&A. Of course, if you have your own question and you think, wow, I'd really like to ask a question now, then, you know, my DMs on my Instagram are open, my DMs on my TikTok are open, the comments on this YouTube video or any other YouTube video for that matter are always open. Just ask a question. Feel free to ask any question about Klama's Adventures or PENCILBURN Studios. Just make sure the questions are invasive, like, where do you live? Because I'm not going to be answering those. So thank you for asking questions. Thank you for watching. I might do another one of these soon. If you'd like that, let me know. See you around, and keep your eyes peeled. I'm hoping to release all kinds of things, and I hope you enjoy them. Peace.